Janice was packing her bag while her husband was relaxing on the couch after a long day at work. She was disappointed that they couldn't go on this trip together, but she hoped they'd have the chance to go on a future trip. Jana had decided to go on this vacation with her friend Camila because their schedules didn't match up. Jana's husband couldn't take time off at the same time, eager for a much-needed break. She wasted no time in persuading Camila to join her. Asher's job had been tumultuous in recent months, with several specialists leaving and the workload being redistributed among those who remained. Hiring new staff was a slow process, leaving them with no choice but to soldier on. Taking a vacation didn't seem like an option at the moment. However, Jana wasn't easily discouraged. She had a resilient spirit and promptly sought solutions to any obstacles that came her way. She and Camila selected a hotel and secured their tickets. The days zipped by in a blur. Asher kept in touch with his wife every day, which helped them stay connected despite the distance. His busy schedule at work also kept his mind occupied upon Jan's return. The couple decided to celebrate with a meal at a local restaurant. Asher couldn't help but notice that Jan seemed. She kissed him, looking utterly rejuvenated and more laid back than usual. Back before schedule, it was clear the holiday had done her a world of good. In no time at all, they were back to their usual routine. Jana went back to work, which meant that the couple only saw each other in the mornings and evenings. One day, Asher finished work early and found himself at the apartment door before he'd even finished his work. As he got his keys out, he heard. He was taken aback when he was suddenly interrupted. He turned around and saw a young man holding a huge bouquet of flowers. "Is this apartment number 50? I have a beautiful bouquet here for Jana. Do you mind if I give it to you?" he asked, a little confused. Asher took the bouquet of snow-white lies and headed inside. She rummaged through the flowers and went back to the apartment to look for a note. Janana seemed puzzled. It looked like the courier had delivered a bouquet to her. Her husband watched her reaction for a moment and thought she recognized the sender. However, her surprise was as genuine as his when she considered the unexpected flowers. "It must be some kind of mistake. It's not my birthday today," she said, "but the courier gave your name and apartment number." "I don't know if you're bothered by them," her husband said. "You can leave them if you want. I don't even know who they could be from." Later on, he noticed something else that seemed a bit strange. Jana started to spend a lot of time on her phone, constantly messaging someone whenever Asher asked her about it. She would brush off his questions by saying she was chatting with her girlfriends, but oddly enough, she never left her phone alone anymore. In the past, she would just leave it lying around on any random table, but not anymore. Asher was driven by curiosity to snoop while Jana was showering. He sifted through her phone but didn't find any damning evidence. However, he noticed something odd. She hadn't messaged her girlfriends in days. So with whom had she been communicating recently? As it turned out, Jana was busy cooking dinner in the kitchen one evening. Asher was in the kitchen while Jana was busy cooking dinner. Asher was sitting at the computer reading, but the doorbell rang. They weren't expecting anyone, so Asher went to the door. There was a stranger there wearing an elegant suit, holding a bouquet of flowers. Asher's gaze was immediately drawn to the flowers, white lilies exactly, the same as the ones the courier had accidentally delivered to their apartment not so long ago. The newcomer smiled and spoke rapidly in French. Asher understood when he realized that the man was asking for permission to speak to Jan. Interestingly, the man called Asher brother and asked who he was. Asher replied, thinking back to the man replied, showing a photo on his mobile. In the picture, he and Jana were on a beach. She was adjusting her hat, and remarkably, her wedding ring was missing from her finger. Asher reflected that his wife had a great time at this place. He called her from the kitchen, eager to see how she would get out of this predicament. Jana came out of the kitchen while wiping her hands on her towel. Her hands on a towel and muttering under her breath, she shifted her gaze to the stranger holding the flowers, then slowly turned to her husband. "Jana, your admirer is standing in front of you and wants to speak with you." The foreigner was delighted to see her, but Jan noticed she was pale when the man approached to hand her the flowers. She instinctively stepped back. "Asher, please tell me who is." "I don't know him," she said carefully. The foreigner continued speaking rapidly, pausing for a moment as he noticed the absence of the ring that had once adorned her finger. His gaze then shifted to Asher's hand, allowing him to piece together the situation and realize the truth. His previous affability disappeared. He began shouting at Jana and threw the flowers onto the floor. Jana, though visibly shaken, She managed to calm the man down, but her efforts were mostly in vain. When the man's anger finally subsided, he continued making a scene before storming out of the apartment. Asher turned to his wife. She looked pale and confused, but she didn't claim that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. The reality was obvious. She had started a vacation affair. Her lover didn't know she was married. He'd been charmed by her and had come to surprise her. Before this, he'd sent her flowers and written letters, but Jana had already slipped back into the role of a devoted wife, making these gestures seem wholly inappropriate. Meeting her husband's gaze, she turned to him with a final plea. "Asher, please forgive me. Things got out of hand. We had a drink and he invited me to dance." She began in a slightly trembling voice. "I see now why. You'd rather text than call, right?" "It was Camila replying to me, wasn't it?" Asher said with a hint of sarcasm. Janice stayed silent, realizing that denying it was pointless. "Just go and get your stuff and leave," Asher said coldly. "I have rights to this place too," she replied, her tone shifting from sad to assertive. "Everything's been." "You're legally settled, so you've got 10 minutes, he countered, tapping his watch impatiently. He noticed that his typically composed husband was starting to simmer with anger. Jana knew better than to push him further. She quickly packed her essentials and exited the apartment, leaving behind the escalating tension. Asher learned from a neighbor that Jana had rushed out and started frantically asking people in the yard about the guy in the suit who'd recently left. It was clear she decided to take her chances with the stranger. But Asher had a feeling it wouldn't work out for her, despite the bad situation. Asher felt a sense of relief. He'd unmasked his partner's true character now, rather than a decade into their marriage.